Hello, it's Natalie with Crochet by NatalieLucille, and today I'm going to show you how you can make a striped reversible beanie on the Addi Knitting Machine. It's so thick, so soft. It has a great feel to it. Let's get started. So for making this hat, I have 3 colors in worsted weight yarn. I am using Caron Simply Soft. And we're going to start with the solid color first. And each round is 50 rows. So it's more of a smaller beanie, maybe a child's or someone with a small head. Make sure your lever is down on the side here so it goes around in a circle. And get yourself a bit of a long tail. And we're going to cast on. So you're going to put your tail in the center and you're going to go in the front and then behind, front, behind, front, behind, all the way around. This is how you cast on for your Addi machine for the knit stitch. And just work your way slowly because you don't want to drop a stitch. So your yarn will go under the needle. I guess you would call it the teeth, and you want it to grab hold. And once you're finished casting on, you'll come right before the first black needle, put your yarn in the carriage and close the top, and start cranking. And you kind of want to start out slow to make sure that all the needles are catching the yarn. Have a nice tension on the yarn that's coming out of the carriage because you don't want it too loose or too tight. You just want it to kind of flow through your fingers. So in this, we're going to just keep cranking until we get 50 rounds. And we're about halfway through, and you could see that it's pretty tight. And once you get it off the machine and stretch it out, it'll be the way you want it to look, I promise. So just keep cranking, all for a total of 50. And once you get 50, you'll want to cut your yarn and take the tail. You'll open your carriage, of course, take the tail, and it'll go on the left side of the black needle. And your new color, which I'm using the dark purple, will go, the tail itself will go in the center, and it'll go to the right of the black needle. And you'll close your carriage. Kind of hold your strings just to make sure they go under the needle, and they do. And I noticed in the finished product, my lines didn't, I guess, line up correctly, so that's something that I definitely have to work on. So in this, where you have your color changes, we'll just put that in the back. It's kind of like the Christmas tree, the not so pretty ornaments go in the back, but you don't want to throw them away. So it's in the back of the tree. So, yeah, you'll see at the end of the video. And just keep cranking for 10 rounds with this first color. You'll also want to tie your tails once you get a few rounds in, just so your yarns don't come loose in your hat. And then once you secure that, just throw it in the middle again and keep cranking. And so you'll get a total of 10 rounds with the first color. Once you get 10, cut your yarn, open your carriage, and your yarn will go on the left side of the black needle, and you'll get your third color, which I'm using a really light, almost white purple. And your tail will go in the center, and it'll go to the right of the black needle. Close your carriage, grab your tails just to make sure it goes under and it catches on the needle, and then start cranking. Again, you're going to do 10 rounds of this color. And don't forget when you're working each color to tie your tails so that it just doesn't come loose. Keep cranking. Total of 10. I would keep the camera on when I am cranking, but it shakes the camera because it's attached to the table. So I apologize for anybody that might have a little bit of vertigo. It's not my intention. So I went a little bit too far. So you're going to cut your tail. The yarn goes on the left side. The new yarn goes to the right of the black needle. Kind of grab it, and you want to make sure it, kind of go back just a tiny bit. You want to make sure it catches, because if it doesn't catch, you're going to lose your stitch. And so you want to make sure everything catches, because you don't want any drop stitches, and at the end you don't want any what they call live stitches, because they'll just unravel if it's not in the stitch, if that makes sense. Remember, I'm a crocheter, so I knit very little. I know how to knit. Knitting kind of scares me just a bit because I'm always afraid of a drop stitch, because in crochet you can just pull it all out. But with knitting, when something drops, I get a little nervous. So this is also why I like the machine, because I can crank out a lot, like hats and scrunchies and head wraps. Do it really quickly. So this is why I like it. So now I've come to the end, and I've cut a long tail on my last color. So you're going to do a total of 50 rounds in the first color, and then in your two colors that you alternate, they're 10 a piece till they reach 50 rounds. So now I'm going to cast off with waste yarn. So get a yarn that is a contrasting color to your finished color, so to speak. And this is just a waste yarn. You don't need much, but once you do hook it on, you're going to do about 7 rounds. Or rows, I guess. Rounds or rows. So now that it's hooked on, we're just going to go around for 7. And in my previous video, I showed how you can cast off without using the waste yarn. So this is another way of casting off. There's a few ways, and this is one of them. Now that I've completed the 7 rows, we're going to finish off. So you'll just lift your string and then just start cranking it, and you're going to crank it twice. This loosens the yarns from the needles, because there's nothing to pull it down. And then you crank again and everything starts falling off. And this is what you want. Some get a little hooked. You just have to help them out. If you have to crank it again, just kind of help them out a little bit, and then it'll all come off. So just keep it working it around. Once that needle comes up, that'll fall right off, and there's your work. So let's take the Addi off and let's start our work now. Now you see how, because it's stretched lengthwise or widthwise, when you're done, you straight lengthwise. Look at that. It's like magic. Look at that. And see, that's where my colors, I was like, oh no, when I change my colors, that's the back. That's the back of the Christmas tree up in the corner. So it'll just go in the back. So I got to figure out how to better change colors. And if you have a suggestion, please let me know. You can either email me or you can comment below in how to better change colors. So I'm going to turn my work inside out, and I'm going to strengthen the yarn if it needs an extra knot. I'm going to do that, and I'm also going to cut them. They'll be in the center or inside, I guess you could say. You won't ever see them. You don't have to worry about weaving them in. But I do cut them down just a little bit. And I'm just going to do this with each one. That one didn't need any extra. Third one, let's see. And once they're just tightened, just cut it down. Now, of course, if you didn't have this to go into the inside, you would need to weave it in so it gives it a finished look, of course. So you don't want to just leave little tails hanging out. That's not very pretty. So just keep working that. And just kind of stretch it here and there. I'm kind of disappointed in the change of my colors. They didn't line up correctly, so got to figure that one out. So now I'm going to weave in the one end with my waste yarn, and I'll show you how you use just a regular whip stitch, because if you take off the waste yarn before you whip stitch or sew your ends, everything will unravel. So you want to make sure everything is secure. And so go ahead and get a tapestry needle and grab your main color, not the waste yarn, but your main color. And we're going to start sewing that, because once the waste yarn's off, you'll cinch it, and this will become the top of the hat. So you find your contrasting color, and it is dark, I do apologize, but you can see where your main color is right up against the white of the waste yarn. So you're going to start whip stitching it all the way around. You don't want to miss a stitch, because if so, it becomes a live stitch and it'll just unravel. So just keep working and sewing all the way around. This is really relaxing. It's one of the easier parts of working your hat. I'm just going to continue all the way around till I reach the end. Now that I have reached the end, I'm just going to take my tail out of the tapestry needle, and I'm going to start pulling on the loose end of the waste yarn, and it'll just start unraveling for you. And it's very therapeutic. And because you don't have to cut this waste yarn, you can use it again. And the waste yarn I'm actually using is a worsted weight, and my Addi machine does not like it. It's what they would consider sticky yarn. It just really doesn't want to feed through the machine. So now we're going to start cinching up this part, and you want to work it kind of slow, because once you start cinching, your ends will want to curl in or curl out, and you don't want that. So you just kind of keep cinching and unrolling. Just keep cinching, unrolling. And then when it's almost cinched all the way up, you're going to put your hand in, kind of grab it as well as the tail, and you're going to pull it through to the other side almost all the way through, because you're going to work the top. So you kind of grab it where it will be the brim, and just kind of pull it through, but don't pull it all the way through. My apologies, phone just rang. So just keep working that through and you just hold that there. And you're going to grab your tail on your main color and you're going to start cinching that. You're going to do the same thing. It'll start trying to roll, so just unroll. This is so much easier to see than the darker color, so I'm glad you're able to see this. So just keep working it. You don't want to lose your other brim because you're going to cinch those together here in just a second. So cinch, unroll, cinch, unroll. Make sure that doesn't fall into the abyss. And it really is important to make sure it doesn't roll up. If not, you'll have like a cauliflower looking top. It won't look right. So now I'm going to grab the inside to make sure that everything is kind of cinched together. And because once you turn it inside out, you want one side to look exactly like the other. So they're both almost done. They're not rolling up anymore, so it's right there at the top. So you can see how nice the top is looking. So then you just want to tie it off. So I'll tie it around 3 times in a knot. You want it cinched really, really good, or tied really, really good. You don't want it to come undone. And we're almost done here, guys. It is just as simple as this. So now our tails are pretty long. Let's cut those down just a bit now because we're going to weave them in. And then what you'll want to do is get a crochet hook. Of course, mine's out of reach. There it is. And you want to go in between the layers. So, and you can feel that too. So when it is the way that you want, I just, of course, have to keep fiddling. You want to put your crochet hook in between the layers. So grab the top layer, come up through the top of the hat, grab your yarn, wrap it around, and pull it through. You're not going to pull this real tight. It's just to tuck it in. So once that's done, kind of pull a little bit, give it some slack, cut, and kind of stretch it just a wee. And there you have it. Except for the color changes. So it's something that I definitely have to work on. How pretty. Except that's in the back, remember. Not in the front, unless you can, bejewel it or whatever they call it. Put something in the front. But thanks, guys, for watching. I hope you learned something new. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Until then, bye.